Today we're going to talk about angle relationships. In geometry, we're often given figures that have some information provided, but there's also lots of pieces that are left out. And sometimes we're asked to find some of those pieces, such as a missing angle. We use angle relationships to solve some of those problems. Before we talk about those angle relationships, though, let's review the types of angles that we discussed last week. The first type of angle we talked about is a right angle, and a right angle measures exactly 90 degrees. We also talked about, in symbols and labeling, that a right angle may have a box in the angle, which lets us know it's exactly 90 degrees. The second type of angle that we talked about is an acute angle, and an acute angle measures less than 90 degrees. And finally, we talked about an obtuse angle, which measures more than 90 degrees. There is one more type of angle that we didn't talk about last week, and that would be a straight angle. A straight angle, or a line, will always measure 180 degrees. If we look here at the hands on this clock, one hand is pointing to the 6 and one is pointing to the 12. So this angle here, in between the two hands, is exactly 180 degrees. Now on to relationships. Complementary angles are two angles whose measures add to equal 90 degrees. So you see here, our first two, we have an angle measure of 27 degrees, an angle measure of 63 degrees, and 27 plus 63 equals 90 degrees. If you put them side by side, they could be pasted together to form a right angle. Let's look at this one. We have an angle of 40 degrees and an angle of 50 degrees. When you put them together, 40 plus 50 is 90, and you can see that pasting them together does make a right angle. Now, if you remember when we first started talking today, the picture that was on our screen showed an acute angle and a complementary angle. So let's take a look at it. The complementary angle is telling the acute angle, wow, you look so cute today. Well, think about it. You have a day when you are dressed up for school, you know you're looking great, and somebody says, hey, you look great today. And you say, thanks, you're right. Well, they give you a compliment, and they're right. Complementary, right angle. I know it sounds cheesy, but it is a really good way to remember that complementary angles make a right angle when you put them together. Next, let's look at supplementary angles. Supplementary angles are two angles whose measures add to equal 180 degrees. Here we have an angle that's 139 degrees and another that's 41 degrees. If you add these two numbers together, we get 180 degrees. You also notice if you paste them together, they do form a straight line. The next type we need to talk about is vertical angles. A vertical angle happens when two lines intersect. They form vertical angles. Vertical angles are not side by side, but they are across from each other, so they're opposite sides. Here we've got angle FEG, and angle FEG is opposite angle IEH, and you notice both of these measure 134 degrees. Now, this happens every single time. Always, the angles across from each other, these vertical angles, are the same. So they are always congruent. You see here also FEI is 46 degrees and GEH is 46 degrees. Again, every single time with every set of intersecting lines, vertical angles, the opposite sides, are congruent. The next type we need to talk about is a linear pair. A linear pair are two angles that form a line. Since they form a line, a linear pair must also be supplementary. So they are going to add up to 180 degrees. A linear pair shares a common side, So basically, they're supplementary angles that have already been pasted together. So here, angle 1 and angle 2 are a linear pair. So now we know our angle relationships. We are going to pause to practice a little bit, and then we're going to talk about how to use those relationships to solve some of the problems that we will see.